The night had a velvet silence to it, the kind that feels almost alive, breathing softly against the skin, humming in the hollows between the trees. The moon hung low, a silver coin resting on the lip of the horizon, and its light spilled across the forest floor in pale ribbons. Elias had been walking for hours, guided by the dim glow of his lantern and the faint trail that wound between the birch and cedar. He did not know exactly what had drawn him here. Perhaps it was the letter he had found tucked inside his grandmother's old journal, a fragment of a story about a lake that could whisper dreams into the hearts of those who listened long enough. Or perhaps it was something deeper, a quiet pull from within, like the echo of a forgotten lullaby. He paused beside a moss-covered stone, catching his breath. The air smelled of pine and cold earth, sharp yet soothing. Above him, a constellation shimmered faintly, as if half hidden behind a veil of mist. The forest around him was not entirely asleep. From somewhere far off came the soft rustle of wings and the gentle creak of trees stretching in the wind. Elias smiled faintly. "Almost there," he murmured to himself, though he wasn't sure where there was anymore. He only knew that he had to keep walking. The path narrowed as it dipped into a shallow valley, and the ground beneath his boots grew softer, spongier. A thin fog began to coil around his ankles, pale as breath in the cold air. The light from his lantern seemed to ripple, as though the mist itself was alive, whispering and shifting in slow patterns. There was no fear in Elias, only curiosity, the kind that makes a man step deeper into the unknown, because something gentle, something ancient seems to be waiting. He had always believed that certain places held memories, that if you listened closely enough, you could hear the earth speak. Tonight, the earth was whispering. After another stretch of silence, the forest opened into a wide clearing. There, nestled at the center, like a secret kept too long, was the lake. Its surface was utterly still, smooth as glass, reflecting the moon with perfect clarity. For a long moment, Elias simply stood and watched. The lake seemed endless, and yet he could see the faint outline of the far shore, dark trees mirrored upside down, as if the world itself had folded in half. He set down his pack and knelt by the water's edge. The reflection of his face wavered as a faint ripple crossed the surface. Then, softly, the whisper began. It wasn't a voice exactly. It was more like the sigh of the wind caught in reeds or the sound of a page turning somewhere far away. But the rhythm of it was unmistakable, gentle, beckoning. Elias leaned closer, his pulse steady, his eyes wide. The whisper seemed to form words, faint and shifting. "Do you remember the name you once had?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" he whispered back, his breath scattering the reflection. The water shimmered, but no answer came, only a low hum that seemed to vibrate deep in his chest. He felt an odd warmth spreading through him, not from the lantern, but from the ground beneath his palms, as if the lake itself was alive with memory. He closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw flashes, images that weren't his own. A child running barefoot through rain, a woman laughing beside a fire, a candle flickering in an old stone window. He gasped and opened his eyes. The images vanished. The lake was still again. "Dreams," he murmured. "You whisper dreams." He dipped his fingers into the water, and the surface responded with a faint shimmer of light, like tiny stars scattered across his skin. It was beautiful and a little sad, the kind of beauty that feels almost like remembering. He sat there for a long time, listening. The forest around him had fallen into complete silence, as though even the trees were holding their breath. The whispers grew softer, slower, wrapping around him like a lullaby sung by the world itself. He thought of his grandmother then, how she used to hum old songs while he drifted to sleep, how she'd once told him that every story had a place where it began and another where it wanted to rest. "Maybe this is where your stories come to rest," he said quietly, smiling to himself. When the wind shifted, Elias caught the faint scent of jasmine, though there were no flowers nearby. The air grew warmer and the mist parted slightly to reveal a small wooden dock stretching out into the lake. He hadn't noticed it before. It looked worn but sturdy, its edges traced in silver moonlight. He rose slowly, lantern in hand, and walked toward it. Each step made a soft creak beneath his boots, and with every sound the lake seemed to breathe in and out, matching his rhythm. The further he walked, the clearer the whispers became, not louder, but closer, like someone speaking directly behind him. "Do not be afraid," they said. "You are not lost. You are only returning." The words sent a tremor through him, though not of fear, more like recognition. He reached the end of the dock and set the lantern down beside him. The water glowed faintly, as though moonlight had sunk beneath the surface and was shining upward from the depths. He knelt, leaned forward again, and whispered, "What am I returning to?" This time the water rippled more strongly, and a single droplet leapt upward, touching his forehead like a blessing. A whisper came again, softer than ever, "To the dream you left unfinished." And just like that, Elias felt his body relax completely. His heartbeat slowed, the sounds of the forest faded to nothing. There was only the water, the whisper, and the feeling of being gently cradled by something larger than himself. He lay down on the dock, his head resting on his folded arms, and watched the stars tremble on the surface of the lake. Somewhere in the distance, a night-bird sang a single note, long and low, and the whisper answered it like a harmony. Elias smiled faintly, his eyelids growing heavier with each passing moment. As sleep began to take him, the lake shimmered once more, and if anyone had been watching, they might have seen the faintest outline of a figure reflected beside him, a woman's shape, her hair flowing like water, her hand reaching out as if to touch his. But Elias did not see. He was already dreaming. When Elias awoke, he wasn't sure whether he had slept or simply crossed a thin veil between waking and dreaming. The world around him glowed softly, every edge blurred, as though the air itself was painted with moonlight. He was no longer on the dock. He stood instead on a meadow that shimmered with silver dew, endless and quiet, where each blade of grass whispered when he stepped. Above him, constellations turned slowly, not in the sky, but beneath a crystal dome of shifting light, as if the heavens had sunk to earth to watch him wander.
A warm wind brushed his cheek. It carried the scent of jasmine again, and something else, faintly sweet, like rain falling on old paper. Ahead, a narrow path curved through the meadow, lit by floating orbs of light that pulsed gently, in rhythm with his heartbeat. They seemed alive, like memories given shape. Elias followed them, though he could not tell if he was walking forward or backward through time. Every step felt familiar, as if his feet remembered a journey his mind had forgotten. The whispers were still there, softer now, woven into the wind. They spoke without words, and yet he understood. "Welcome back, dreamer." The phrase filled him with warmth and a strange ache. He looked down at his hands. They shimmered faintly, translucent, like light passing through water. "Is this a dream?" he asked the air. The whisper answered, "It is what you left behind when you woke." He walked on until the meadow opened into a valley ringed by tall white trees. Their bark gleamed like pearl, and their branches formed arches that met high above him, creating a cathedral of living wood. Beneath them, a stream flowed so clear it seemed invisible, its surface broken only by the silver ripples of unseen fish. He knelt beside it, cupped the water in his hands, and drank. It was cool and weightless, tasting of memory and stillness. With each sip, fragments returned to him: his grandmother's voice, the creak of her rocking chair, the sound of rain against her window. She had once told him, "Every dream you forget still waits for you, Elias. It waits in the places between stars." Now, standing in that strange forest, he finally understood. A figure appeared on the opposite bank, veiled in pale light. Her face was hidden, but her presence felt familiar. The same warmth that had touched his forehead at the lake. When she spoke, her voice was neither near nor far, but everywhere. "You've come back sooner than I thought." Elias hesitated. "Who are you?" "I am what remains when your stories sleep," she said gently. "I am the part of you that listens." Her words rippled through the air, soft as the lake's whisper. Elias felt no fear. "Is this the lake?" he asked. The figure smiled, though her face stayed hidden. "The lake is the doorway. You stepped through when you listened too long." He took a step closer. "Can I go back?" Her light flickered faintly, like a candle sighing. "You can always go back, but every dream leaves a reflection. When you return, you will not be the same." Elias looked around. The valley was shifting now, the trees breathing, the stars folding inward like petals. It felt like standing inside a heartbeat. "Why me?" he whispered. The answer came as a whisper in the wind. "Because you still believe the world can speak." Something in him softened. For years, Elias had lived quietly, writing, walking, never quite belonging anywhere. He had thought that loneliness was the price of listening deeply. But here, in this place where even silence had a voice, he realized that the world had always been speaking. He had simply forgotten the language. The woman extended her hand. "Walk with me," she said. "The lake remembers you." Elias reached for her, and the moment his fingers touched her light, the forest dissolved into ripples. He felt himself sinking, not into darkness, but into a warm, endless glow. He saw shapes moving beneath the surface, children chasing stars, a man painting with moonlight, a bird made of glass singing without sound. Every image felt like a piece of him, scattered and now gathered again. Then he heard it, the hum of the lake, steady and low. He was floating just beneath its surface, weightless. The woman's voice came once more, faint as breath. "When you wake, you will not remember my face, but you will remember how the world hums when it sleeps." The light dimmed, and the surface began to pull him upward. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth carry him. He felt the faint touch of air, the scent of pine, the cool kiss of night, and then he opened his eyes. He was back on the dock. The lantern still glowed beside him, though its flame had burned low. The sky was the same soft gray of early dawn. The whispers were gone, replaced by the gentle lap of water against wood. But the calm in his chest remained, deep and steady. Elias sat up, breathing slowly. Somewhere in the stillness, he thought he heard a faint echo, the last trace of that other world. A single whisper. "Listen, and the world will remember you too." He smiled, eyes heavy but peaceful, and for the first time in years, he felt at home.
Morning came softly, like a sigh drifting through the trees. Pale light touched the water, turning the lake's surface into liquid glass. Elias sat on the dock, knees drawn to his chest, watching the faint mist curl above the water. The world felt freshly born, quiet, slow, unhurried. Each sound, the flutter of a bird's wings, the gentle knock of waves against wood, seemed to carry its own heartbeat. He breathed it in and felt something inside him settle, as if the restless part of his soul had finally found a place to rest. He tried to remember the dream clearly, the meadow of light, the woman's voice, her hand reaching out, but it was already slipping away. Only fragments remained, the warmth of her presence, the echo of her words. "When you wake, you will not remember my face." And yet, though her face was gone from his memory, the peace she left behind stayed, like sunlight trapped beneath his ribs. When he rose, the forest greeted him as if it had been waiting. The leaves shimmered in the breeze, and the path that had brought him here seemed different, brighter, softer underfoot. He began to walk, not knowing where he was going, but trusting that wherever the path led would be enough. Every few steps, he caught the faintest sound behind him, like water whispering against stone. It wasn't frightening. It was comforting, like knowing someone was still listening. After some time, he found a small clearing. In its center stood a stone well, overgrown with ivy. Its rim was etched with symbols that glowed faintly under his touch. Elias leaned over and looked inside. The water within reflected the sky perfectly, but when he blinked, the image changed. Instead of his own face, he saw a younger version of himself, sitting beside his grandmother's bed, reading aloud from a book of old myths. Her voice echoed faintly. Every story we tell becomes a home for a dream. The reflection rippled and faded. Elias whispered, "So this is where they live." He dropped a small pebble into the well. As it sank, light blossomed from the depths, spiraling upward like threads of memory. He closed his eyes, letting the hum of the well surround him. For a heartbeat, he could almost feel her hand on his shoulder, the warmth of love that never truly left. When he opened his eyes again, the well was still, and the forest had grown even quieter, as if holding the moment for him. He continued walking until the trees thinned and the land sloped gently upward. From the crest of a hill, he saw the lake below, vast and luminous, stretching farther than before. It was changing, alive, mirroring the shifting color of the sky. And there, at its far edge, stood a wooden cottage, small and smoke-gray, with light flickering in the window. Elias felt a tug in his chest. Without hesitation, he descended the hill and followed a narrow trail to its door. The cottage smelled of cedar and rain. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the soft crackle of firewood. On a table near the hearth lay an open book, its pages blank except for a single line written in neat, looping script. Every listener becomes a keeper of the lake. Elias touched the words, and the ink shimmered beneath his fingers, spreading across the page like water. Letters formed slowly, writing themselves before his eyes. They told stories, dozens, hundreds, each one a dream, each one a whisper left behind by someone who had come before him. Faces appeared faintly within the ink, smiling, fading, reappearing. He realized the truth. The lake didn't only whisper dreams, it kept them, safe and alive, waiting for those who would listen again. He turned to the window. Outside, the lake gleamed like liquid silver, endless and patient. He said, "So this is my task, to listen, to remember." As if in answer, a soft breeze entered through the open door, carrying the faintest murmur of words. "Do not keep them all. Let some return to the water." Elias smiled. He understood. Stories were meant to drift, to move, to find new hearts to rest in. He picked up the book, carried it outside, and knelt at the water's edge once more. The lake reflected his face, older now, calmer. He whispered, "I'll listen, and I'll let them go." He opened the book, and one by one he read aloud the words written within. With each sentence, the ink lifted from the page, dissolving into light. The air shimmered with fragments of dreams, stars, voices, laughter. And they drifted over the water before fading into the dawn. The lake hummed softly, like a song of gratitude.
When the last page was blank, Elias closed the book and pressed it to his chest. The whispers faded, leaving only the rhythm of waves. For a long moment, he stood there, wrapped in quiet. Then he said, almost to himself, "The lake doesn't just whisper, it listens too." And the wind, soft as breath, seemed to agree.
The following night, the air was colder. A thin mist coiled over the lake's surface like a sleeping breath. Elias sat by the water, the blank book resting in his lap. The stars above had gathered thick as dust, and the moon hung full, painting silver paths across the waves. He listened to the quiet hum beneath the stillness, a music so faint it felt like it lived inside the bones of the world. He was not alone. At first, he thought the sound was only the shifting of branches, but then he saw a lantern flicker on the far side of the shore. Its glow wavered, moved closer, and soon a figure emerged through the mist. It was a woman wrapped in a long, dark coat, her hair braided with small feathers that shimmered in the moonlight. She carried a satchel and walked slowly, as though listening to the earth beneath her steps. When she reached him, she smiled, softly, knowingly. "I thought I was the only one who still heard it," she said. Elias tilted his head. "The whisper?" She nodded. "The lake calls, doesn't it? Not with sound, but something deeper, like a memory you didn't know you lost." He smiled faintly. "Yes, that's exactly what it feels like." She sat beside him, setting her lantern down. Its flame danced on the ripples. For a while, they said nothing, only listened. The silence between them was easy, like two people sharing the same dream. Finally, Elias asked, "How did you find it?" She traced her finger through the air, following the line of the horizon. "I was traveling north. I'd lost my way during a storm. When the clouds broke, I saw the moon reflected where there should have been land. The moment I stepped closer, I heard the whisper. It said, 'Come rest here a while.' So I did." Elias looked at her, curiosity bright in his eyes. "And did it speak to you?" She smiled. "It sang. Not with words, more like a memory of words. It showed me a place I used to dream of when I was a child. A room with books that glowed. A window that opened into stars. I think it was reminding me of something I'd forgotten. That wonder isn't lost when we grow, only quieter." Her voice drifted like the mist itself, gentle and slow. Elias felt the lake pulse softly beside them, as though echoing her words. He said, "I've seen things here too. A woman made of light, a forest that breathes. I think it's showing us what we've left unfinished." The woman nodded. "Dreams are never gone. They just wait for us to return." A hush fell again, deep and kind. The lake's glow brightened for a moment, casting their reflections in rippling silver. Elias noticed how calm her eyes were, filled with that same quiet understanding he had felt in the dream. She turned to him suddenly and asked, "Do you ever wonder what happens if you stay too long?" Elias hesitated. "Maybe you stop belonging anywhere else." She gave a small, wistful laugh. "Maybe that's not such a terrible thing." He looked back at the lake. Perhaps not.
But I think the lake doesn't want us to stay. It wants us to remember. Her expression softened. And to tell others. He nodded. Yes, to tell others. The mist thickened, curling between them like smoke. Her lantern flickered once, twice, then dimmed. She stood, brushing the dew from her coat. She said, "It's time for me to go. I think it's given me what I came for." Elias rose with her. "Will I see you again?" She smiled, a small curve of light in the fog. "If the lake wishes it." Then, without another word, she stepped into the mist. Her form shimmered, blurred, and was gone, swallowed gently by the fog, as if she had never been there at all. The only proof of her passing was the faint echo of her lantern's glow, fading into the distance. Elias stood there for a long time, listening. The lake was utterly still. He opened the blank book in his hands, and on its first page new words had appeared. Every soul that listens becomes part of the song. He traced the words with his thumb, feeling their warmth. Then he whispered to the water, "I'll remember for her." The lake shimmered once in reply, like a smile breaking through silence. That night, Elias did not sleep. He sat by the water until the stars began to fade, and the first light of dawn brushed the sky. And when he finally closed his eyes, the whisper came again, not from the lake, but from within him. It said only one thing: keep listening.
The dawn that followed was golden and soft, the kind that turns mist into ribbons of light. Elias sat beside the lake again, his reflection faint and blurred in the calm water. The woman from the night before felt like a dream, yet her presence lingered, as if the air still carried the echo of her voice. The words in the book glowed faintly when touched by the sun. Every soul that listens becomes part of the song. He wondered what it meant. Could the lake truly remember those who came to it? Was it alive in some way, woven from dreams, memory, and silence? The thought was not frightening. It was comforting, as though the universe had a hidden rhythm that only a few ever heard. As he pondered, a breeze stirred the surface of the water. The ripples gathered into a slow spiral, drawing his gaze toward the center of the lake. There, faintly, a shimmer rose, like light trapped beneath the surface. It pulsed once, twice, and then a voice reached him, softer than a sigh. "Elias, come see." He rose, leaving the book on the dock, and stepped carefully into the shallows. The water was cool, but not cold. It lapped around his ankles, humming with quiet energy. With each step, he felt lighter, as if the lake was taking some hidden weight from his chest. Soon he stood waist deep, and the water began to glow around him. Then the world folded. The forest, the dock, the sky, all dissolved into a wash of pale light. Elias floated in a vast expanse where no horizon existed, only endless shimmer. Shapes moved within the light, fragments of lives, dreams, and forgotten places. A child chasing a kite across golden fields. An old man sitting beside a river, humming to himself. A woman releasing lanterns into the sky. They all drifted through the air like memories set free.
Elias turned slowly, awed. "What is this place?" A voice answered, the same one from before, gentle, melodic. "This is the heart of the lake, where the dreams of all who have listened come to rest." From the light emerged the figure of the woman he had seen in his first dream, the one made of glow and water. Her eyes shimmered like moonlight. "You've walked far, listener. Do you understand now what you are part of?" "I think I do," Elias replied quietly. "The lake isn't just water. It's memory. It holds what people forget." The woman nodded. "Every whisper you hear is a dream that still remembers its dreamer. Every ripple carries a name once spoken in love or hope. The world is noisy, Elias, but here it all becomes silence again." Her words drifted over him like a lullaby. He felt a soft ache, a yearning, both sweet and sad. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did it call to me?" She stepped closer, her light flickering gently. "Because you listened. Most hear only the noise of their own hearts. You heard the quiet beneath it. The lake speaks to those who still believe that silence has meaning." He lowered his gaze. "And what happens now?" "You keep listening," she said with a smile. "And when you return to your world, you carry the song with you. Speak it gently, live it softly, let others rest in it." Her hand touched his chest, and warmth spread through him, steady, radiant, infinite. The light around him began to fade, replaced by the faint outline of the real world. He could see the dock again, the trees swaying gently, the distant glow of dawn. Before the dream dissolved completely, the woman whispered one last thing. "The lake will always wait for you." Elias gasped softly as he found himself once again kneeling in the shallow water. The glow was gone, the lake still and calm as glass. Only the book on the dock seemed changed. Its cover shimmered faintly, and new words had appeared on its first page. "To listen is to remember what the world has forgotten." He smiled, the sound of the whisper still echoing faintly in his heart. He closed the book and pressed it against his chest, feeling the slow, peaceful rhythm of the lake within him. As the first birds began to sing, Elias whispered, "I'll keep listening." And the lake, quiet and infinite, seemed to answer with a single soft ripple across its surface, as if nodding in approval.
When Elias awoke the next morning, the forest felt different. The air held a quiet warmth, and sunlight streamed through the trees like slow-moving gold. The lake was perfectly still, its surface reflecting the sky so clearly that it looked like a second world. He sat on the dock for a long time, the blank book resting beside him, wondering if what had happened in the night was real or something born from the edge of sleep. But when he opened the book again, there were more words waiting for him, written in soft silver ink. "The dreamer who listens becomes the keeper of peace." He smiled. Maybe that was all the proof he needed. Elias decided it was time to leave the lake shore and see where the path would take him. As he walked through the forest, the world seemed to glow with quiet understanding. Every rustle of leaves felt like a greeting, every beam of light a gentle farewell.
He carried the book close to his heart, its weight both real and unreal, filled with whispers that seemed to breathe between its pages. When he reached the edge of the forest, the world beyond looked unchanged, hills rolling into mist, a narrow road winding toward a distant town. Yet something inside him had shifted. The silence that once made him restless now felt like a friend walking beside him. The road led him to a small village by evening. The air smelled of wood smoke and rain. Children's laughter echoed faintly between the houses, and the sound warmed him. He hadn't realized how long it had been since he'd heard such a simple human sound. He stopped by an old inn. Its windows glowed with soft orange light. Inside, a few travelers sat by the fire, speaking quietly. Elias took a seat in a corner, ordered tea, and listened. He noticed how tired everyone looked, faces marked with worry, eyes dulled by long journeys. He remembered the words of the woman in the lake. Speak it gently, live it softly. So he did. That night, when the room had quieted and the fire had burned low, he opened his book and began to tell a story. He spoke of a lake hidden deep within the woods, where the water whispered dreams. He spoke of a voice that sang without words, and of a traveler who learned that silence could heal what time could not. His tone was soft, like the lake's own murmur. At first, no one spoke. Then slowly heads lifted. The innkeeper stopped cleaning glasses and leaned against the counter. A woman by the fire closed her eyes. A child who couldn't sleep crept closer to listen. Elias didn't tell them it was his story. He just let the words drift, like ripples spreading across water. And as the story flowed, something changed in the room. The air grew calmer. The tension in people's faces softened. When he finished, a gentle stillness lingered, warm and deep. An old man near the window whispered, "I dreamed of a lake like that once." Elias smiled. "Maybe it's still dreaming of you." The man chuckled quietly, and the room filled with a peace that didn't need words. Later that night, Elias stepped outside. The moon hung high, casting silver light over the rooftops. He opened the book again. The pages fluttered in the wind, and on one of them, new lines had appeared. Every listener becomes a storyteller. Every storyteller, a dream returned. He closed the book gently. The lake was far away now, yet its voice hummed faintly within him, soft as breath. He realized that he didn't need to be at the water's edge to hear it. The whisper lived in every quiet moment, in every kind word, in the pause between heartbeats. He lifted his gaze to the stars. "You're still there, aren't you?" he whispered. A breeze stirred the air, warm, tender, familiar. It brushed his cheek like a hand, and in that breath of wind he thought he heard it again. Always. Elias smiled and turned toward ahead. He didn't know where it led, but it no longer mattered. The world itself had become the lake, vast, listening, and full of soft, endless dreams.